This section is the last section of the accounts receivable report. We've done the first two sections. This one will teach you how to write the report. So in the report, you can see there are these 4 questions. When we're doing this report, first thing we're going to do is to define the terms. Then we're going to say why it's important and then relate it to Laura's landscapes. If we can, we're going to use figures because figures are really important. I'd like you to type up the report or write it out so that way you have a copy as well. So you can do this with me. I've already written the report. I'm just going to change the color. So the first part is the title, accounts receivable report for Laura's landscape. And we've got to do the purposes of an accounts receivable ledger for Laura's landscape. So we'll rewrite that question. And I've written it here. So I said the purpose of an accounts receivable ledger for Laura's landscape, just repeating what we have here. What is the purpose? And then stated what the purpose is to keep an update record of individual debtors and the transactions with Laura's landscape. So we've repeated the question and we've defined it. That doesn't answer the full part of the question though. So now we have to say, why is that important? So we'll just open that up. And why do you think it's important to have the subsidiary ledger? What does it show you? So obviously by keeping a subsidiary ledger, Laura can answer customer queries with correct information, prepare an aged debtors report to follow up outstanding debts, and reconcile the schedule of accounts receivable with a closing control account so she makes sure she's got accurate records. So we've done the first bit. I hope you've typed this in as well. Is what is it? Why is it important? And then the third part, you need to bring some figures in there. So every time, just type that in, press pause, and then we'll get into the next bit of using the figures. Right, to use the figures, we're going to find out, are there an example? So what I've said is examples include. So if you use examples include, that means that you're going to bring examples from the resource material and put them in here. So fixing a mistake, when Barry Barefoot rang, if we've got up-to-date records, then we can make that changes. So we've given that one there. And also the last part, so one part each. So we've said that it's to keep update record. So we've said about update records. We've said about track of individual debtors, which we've done. And we've also said the balancing figure in the control account, which is at 7652, which matches the closing schedule of accounts. So we can tick that first one off. Then we've got to write with the usefulness of an aged debtors report for Laura. So the first part is you have to define what an aged debtors report is. You can find this in your book or you can copy off here. So I've just got a definition of an aged debtors report and bring Laura's name in there. So what it is, it allows Laura to implement a credit policy, improving debt collections, etc. So this part here is just a definition. The second part is that you need to relate that back to Laura and say, how is it useful? So looking at examples. So make sure you got that typed in as well. So examples. So we're looking at things that stick out for us from the aged debtors report. We've set a list of amount owing, the credit limit, how long it's been outstanding. So we've done that. Sarah Penelope are close to the credit limit, therefore should not have been given additional credit. We've seen that Sarah's limit, and an example of Sarah's limit is $500 and she's owed $640. Also showing how it's useful. Tamsin and Raymond and Penelope all have accounts over 2 months. So these are things that would have to follow up. So again, it shows a usefulness of that aged debtors report. It also helps us with things like our discount policy and our interest policy. So we've charged Raymond White $182 because the discount policy said, or interest policy, they get charged 10% over 2 months. So we won't know that unless we've got an aged debtors report that shows us 2 months. Raymond White owes that $1,820. All right, let's have a read through, type it up yourself. So the next section is actually our biggest one to do. This one's the credit policy, but we need to separate the credit check, credit limit, and discount policy. So what we've said is why it's important to start with, including in here supporting a liquidity position and overall viability. Just press pause and read through that and then type that one out, and then we'll continue. All right, so we've said why they're useful in terms of liquidity. So the next part is attack one at a time. So the first one to look at is the credit checks. So again, we've got to go through this process of defining what a credit check is, giving examples, and evaluating how effective Laura has been. So we'll do that. We'll first define it. A credit check is, we've got a definition there, and then what it should be. So we've said there, checking the ID, other debts owed, credit reputation, security, income level, and then we've said the difficulties or what has happened. So Laura's credit check policy does not follow any of these and has led to issues such as that Penelope broker problem and future potential with those being a little bit longer, those over 2 months. It said what she did, instinctive checking how tidy her places be has not been a good indicator. At a very minimum, what should happen. So we've said what a credit check is, what's happened, what her policy is, and if there's any problems, including really in the market's point of view, they're looking for dollar figures as well. Right, so you type that one in and see if you can understand, have a really good read through. The next section after credit check is credit limit. So we'll define credit limit first. So we've got a definition, you can get that out of your book. Then we'll talk about what's happening with Laura. So Laura has a $500 limit for new customers, $1,500 for existing customers. So we've said what should happen, what Laura has got in her policy, and then how that's been enacted. So we can see there that almost every situation it's been exceeded because either the credit limit's unrealistic, and I've said why. Most sales are over $500, and then the new credit limit is only $500, and also that they're not being enforced. So I'd expect you to put some examples there of who's been over, and so that could be, if we have a look, the credit limit. You can see on your one that here's the credit limit. Here we've got Tamsin's got 1,500 credit limit, and she's on 1820. Alex has got 500, and he's on 1530. So these are the sorts of things you should be talking about in what you write. So again, read through, copy out, and unpause when you've finished. The last section in bullet point 3 is evaluating the discount policy. So what we do is we define what a discount policy is, a discount policy, what it does. Secondly, we talk about what Laura's discount policy is, 5% if paid early. But here it doesn't say what early is. Presumably that's the current month, because we can see Barry and Sarah both got discounts. Again, remember to put dollar figures in there, because that's what the mark is looking for. And the other part is that there was 10% penalty for late amounts owing for 2 months over. And evaluate, is that happening or not? So it did happen. We charged Raymond White, but we didn't charge Tamsin Patel on hers, and nor did we charge Penelope Broker, and she become a bad debt. So we say what is happening, how it's been applied, is it good or not? And then some evaluation by making this clearer at the time of sale. It should reduce the late payment and have cash in quicker to support the liquidity and cash flow. So liquidity and cash flow is needed for the merit and excellence part. Right, so press pause, read through, and type out this into your work. Okay, and the last section is this one, the need for adequate documentation and how that's applied. So firstly, we talk about what adequate documentation is. It's evidence of transactions. And then we talk about what it should be. So what we're looking for is pre-numbered quotes, purchase orders, invoice, and packing slip. We might also bring in the credit note I haven't dealt with here. Why is it important? To ensure what's ordered, that's the quote and purchase order, is what's been delivered, that's the packing slip. In this case, maybe that's relevant. And then what's been billed, which is the invoice. So we've talked about what should happen. Then we talk about what happens in Laura's case. So quotes on request, invoice sent out and it's been checked. A strength of that is that Laura invoices the invoice and checks it before sending it out. Weaknesses, that there's no evidence that they're pre-numbered, which means that they could go missing without anyone's knowledge. There's no multi-copy documents. There could be a comparison between the quote and the invoice to make sure customers are not overcharged. What else have we got? The person who is doing the invoice is also the person who's doing the job, and that separation of duties, we're looking for that to happen. That will make sure that they're not getting discounts to friends, which we've put in there, also that they're not being overcharged for the job. And what we've got to do also is bring in that number there. And we can see there was a problem because on the 2nd of April, the job for 280 was incorrectly billed to Barry Barefoot, should have been billed to Edna Thompson. So this led to customer relation difficulty with Barry and Edna exceeding her credit limit. So again, bring it back to the transactions that you've done. Again, press pause, read it through, make sure it makes sense, and type it out. Right, the last section is just really an evaluation section and what needs to happen. So the last section I've got, overall, there are many changes that would improve, and her cash flow and viability, that's part of the question. Stronger credit checks, using pre-numbered multi-copy quotes and invoices, and then better application of the interest charges. So that's complete. So type up that rest, read through, make sure that it makes sense for you, and you're all ready to go for the reassessment.